What has made Dan Wilson so valuable to the Mariners this year? Mariners radio broadcaster Gary Hill Jr. joins the show to tell us about that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, May 16th, 2025. This is Tony Gonzalez for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. And as always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. Got a longtime friend of the show joining us today. Let's visit with him. Happy to welcome back longtime friend of the show, Mariners radio broadcaster Gary Hill Jr. Gary, thanks for taking the time. How you been?
Anytime, guys. It's great to see you again. It's been a while. It's good to be here.
Yeah. I mean, I got to be honest. I've been seeing you on, the Couch GM and Marine Layer, and I'm going. Now wait a second. Gary's my guy. All right, like you guys back off. All right.
I mean, you were first, so yeah. So I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, it is cool to see you, interacting with some of the other content creators in our space. It's been really cool to see just like the other content creators start to build up their platforms here, and in the Mariners fan base, and seeing guys like what TJ and Lyle, what they're doing right now, and getting credentialed and all the stuff that they're doing, Couch GM, all those guys. So it's really cool. But you are, I feel like maybe I'm wrong on this, but the first Mariners official to kind of welcome in the Mariners content creator space, because I think people watch our show, when we've had you on and probably assume that our friendship started because, I asked you or we asked you to come on the show, but you actually asked us first to come on Mariners Pod, which was really cool. And I was incredibly green at the time and had no idea what I was doing, but that was like a really cool thing that you did that you didn't have to. And still to this day, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I love the community. I think it's amazing. I grew up a Mariners fan in Tacoma, and we didn't have this when I was growing up. It was essentially everyone read Dave Cameron, and Dave Cameron blew my mind because he was writing on the internet about the Mariners and writing about stuff that no one else was talking about. So I mean, he really opened my eyes to a lot of different things as a fan, but that was the only outlet. It was just reading Dave Cameron, who it was amazing. But I look around now and the community is incredible. So, I try and do all I can for the community because it's something I really appreciate, because there's a lot of smart people talking about the Mariners every single day. I know I enjoy it. I know there's thousands of fans out there that enjoy it every single day. So I like to do my little part. It was great having you on. I should do that again. Mariners Pod is taking a hit this year with everything else I've had going on. I haven't done as much as I'd like to, but hopefully I'll get back to it a little more consistently. But I just love it. I love the community. I think we have the most vibrant kind of Mariners podcast blog community that's going on in baseball right now, and anything I can do to help out, I'll do it, because the whole thing I find just great, and you guys are obviously a big part of it.
I've just really appreciated how welcoming the organization has been to the content creators. I was talking to Alex Mayer about this. We caught up for about an inning in Toronto when you guys were here, and just talking about how that's been a big part of this, that we are, very much relevant in the space now. And it's better to welcome us in rather than ignore us, because it has become a big part of that. Obviously, not just us, but again, what TJ and Lyle are doing, Couch GM, Mariner Mojo, the list goes on and on and on. There's been so many content creators that have come up, especially in the last couple of years. It's been really awesome to see, and we've tried to do our part and given them our platform to help them grow a bit as well. And it's been really cool to see, and it's been really cool to see them branch off now and kind of start to collaborate with one another and start to get opportunities with the team and interview people like like you. It's been really, really cool. So yeah, so just been really appreciative of what you've done in that regard, and just what the organization has done in that regard. Now, so you and I also got to meet up a little bit in Toronto about a month ago. A lot has happened since then, and we'll get into that with this ball club. But I wanted to ask you, yeah, a lot has happened. Well, a lot of good,
yeah,
some bad too. We'll get into all of that. Some bad certainly as well. But the next day you were in Boston. You got the off day, and I saw on your Instagram you actually got to go to the Patriots Day game. What was that? Red Sox, White Sox, I think.
Yeah, that day was incredible. It's one of my favorite off days I've ever had. So to set the scene, the day of the Boston Marathon is Patriots Day in Boston. So it's no one works. It's an off day. The Boston Marathon starts, and the Red Sox play an 11 a.m. game. And my whole life, I've wanted the Mariners to get that game. I did not realize we had it best because we played in Toronto, as you mentioned. So we got in Sunday night and we had Monday off. That's the way to do it, because we stayed really close to the marathon. And I've always been, I'm a little bit of a runner, but I'm just amazed by professional runners. Like, I camped out at Aaron and I camped out at like mile 26 and watched these elite runners running through. I mean, these are guys that are running like 4:30 miles in the middle of this race. They're just sprinting. It was incredible. But I've always wanted to experience the Boston Marathon, and it was so much more than I could have imagined, and so much more emotional than I thought it was going to be. Like, there were thousands of people lined up everywhere. And after the elites, like, normal runners started coming through, and there's a couple times that the runners would see like their families and run over and have big hugs on the sideline. And there was this one moment specifically, like as you make the turn to Boylston, it's kind of a jog turn, and this woman was running, and you could see she was just wasted. She's gone 25 miles, and you could see it on her face. And she turns the corner, and like, all these Bostonians they have their bells and they're cheering, because they're cheering everyone. And her face just lights up, and it's like, she's going to make it now, because it's so great. And then we walked down the route and just watched the race, and then walked to Fenway, walked in. It was like the 6th inning. Red Sox, White Sox, went up on the monster seats, just hanging out, watching the game. We could look down and see the Red Sox, White Sox play, and then turn around behind us and see the marathon. And the sun was out, and I was like, this is it. This is the greatest off day of all time. It was so fun.
How far do you think you could get in the Boston Marathon?
Oh, God. Well, first of all, I would never qualify. Qualifying these days, these people are so fast. So the longest I've ever gone at one time is 13 miles. So that's halfway. So I have no chance.
What's another half, Gary? What's another half?
Yeah, what's another half? Yeah, I would collapse. It did. I'd given up on it, because every time I've tried to increase my mileage, I've gotten hurt. So I'd given up on it and just been like, okay, I'm healthy. I run my whatever. But then after watching the marathon, I got inspired. So I'm like, maybe I'll give it another shot. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I have no faith that I'm actually going to make this happen, but maybe I'll give it a shot. We'll see.
We were talking a little bit before we hit record that, you're obviously about to go on a very long road trip. What is your favorite visiting city to take a run in?
Oh, so I have a favorite spot in just about every city. Boston is actually a great one. I run by the river, and I can kind of go across to Cambridge, which is really great. Our old place in Toronto was super fun, because I go on the water and just you can go as long as you want. Chicago's great along the lake. It's great in the summer along the lake.
Sure. Yeah.
It's awful early in the year along the lake.
Yeah.
I've had one of my greatest runs and one of my worst all-time ever runs in the same spot on that lake. So it's got to be the time of year. Like San Francisco along the wharf is incredible. That's one of my favorites. Central Park is just it's an all-time great one. It's so big and there's so many interesting things going on. I mean, every place mostly has a really fun spot to be at. San Diego's great, which we're going to next because of the water. And funny enough, Houston is one of my favorites because I like hot, and it's really hot. And I kind of go through an arboretum and ends up at a park, and the arboretum's super interesting. Like, I almost stepped on a poisonous snake a couple times ago, which was pretty fun. So it's Houston. You never know what you're gonna get. So there's that.
I lived in New Mexico for 10 years, so I understand.
That was fun. It's especially on road trips like this, it's the thing that centers me and keeps me going, just to get outside and gets me a view of the city a little bit, which I like. But I feel like to survive on the road on these long trips and consistent trips, like, you got to have your thing. You got to have the thing that helps you get you through it. And that's me, just taking jogs outside. That's how I get through these things.
There's nothing like the energy of an MLS match, the chants, the atmosphere, the last-minute goals. If you want to experience it all live, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. With last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLS tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as kickoff gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. I love that I can see the exact view from my seat before I buy, so there's no surprises when I get to the stadium. Gametime also has event cancellation protection and even job loss assurance, so I can buy with confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're here with Mariners radio broadcaster Gary Hill Jr. So, Gary, let's talk a little bit about this Mariners ball club. So they've gone 1-5 on this homestand.
Yeah.
Yikes. They have now put Bryce Miller on the IL. We know all the other guys that are on the IL alongside Bryce. Now they're going to get George Kirby back, presumably at some point along this road trip. Looks like Thursday, the first game against the Astros. We'll see if that actually happens. But how can they survive this?
Yeah.
I guess let's start there.
This is the trick. So let's pull back, I guess, and look at this big picture, because I feel like the Mariners are in a great spot considering everything that's happened. If you would have told me at this point the Mariners would be in first place before the season and their record, I'd be like, yeah. And then I would have assumed their rotation had shoved and their offense had done enough, and this is where they are. The fact that they have been without the rotation for the most part, you know, Woo's been outstanding, but, you know, Gilbert has been gone. Kirby hasn't thrown a pitch. And essentially, we haven't seen Bryce Miller because we have not seen the Bryce Miller we expected to see. And in fact, I think this is actually good news, what has just happened, because now, okay, this is what was going on, right? And the fact that it's not serious is a great thing, too, because they need Bryce Miller, and they need Bryce Miller to be the guy that we saw last year. Underrated, I think, one of the best pitchers in baseball last year. And absolutely. I don't feel like he necessarily got the acclaim for that nationally, but I think he absolutely was. And there's a reality to the situation as we look at it now. Like, they're missing 3 great pitchers, and Kirby and Gilbert were Cy Young Award candidates going into the season. So the fact is you're without those guys, and there's just no one you can plug in to replace that. You know, I know everyone talks about next man up. That's great. It's great in theory, but the reality is you can't replicate those kind of guys. So
and eventually, like, next man up runs its course, right? Like, all right, you know, you lose a couple of guys, sure, but after you lose like your 6th, 7th, 8th everyday contributor, you know, or just big time contributor in general, like, like no one can withstand that.
Yeah, and I give the offense a ton of credit because they've been great. I mean, that month and change series streak they were on was incredible. I mean, walking all the time, homering constantly. Polanco was out of his mind. Cal was great. It was awesome because it carried the load, which was amazing too, because Robles, their leadoff guy, and Rayleigh, who, was a top 3 hitter for the Mariners last year. And Rayleigh is a really key guy to their offense. We probably don't, as in, the outside, not necessarily you guys, probably don't talk about that enough. And the fact they were able to carry through and have this offensive surge is pretty amazing. Now, going into that last road trip, I kind of thought this stretch was going to be really tricky. One is the schedule. 2 is, you weren't going to get 19 homers from Polanco and Cal in May. Like, I don't think that was a fair ask. They were both incredible in April, but we know how baseball works. You can go up, you can go down. You can still be good. Like, Cal's still been really good. It's just you can't ask him to hit 10 home runs every single month. So I thought until you started getting guys back, Kirby specifically, like this stretch of schedule, and then you throw in the Yankees, you throw in the Padres, like really good teams, this was going to be tough. And they're going to have to just find ways to get games. They're going to have to find ways to get series. Unfortunately, the third game against the Yankees, that's one of the games I'm talking about. Like, those are games they're going to have to find ways to get, because you gave up 3 runs to a piping hot offense. And in this stretch, without your guys, when you're giving up 3 runs in a game, you've got to find a way somehow to get that game. So those are the type of games I'm talking about, because it turns around everything. You win that game, you just won a series against the Yankees, right?
Yep.
And then you go into San Diego. So those are the type of games I'm talking about. Like game 2 against the Yankees. That was it. You get a great start from Wu, you find a way to get the win. And they did.
Yeah.
And they beat Fried, which was impressive.
Well, and generally speaking, while Kirby, Gilbert, Miller are down, you need to win the starts that Wu and Castillo are making, right? Colby, what do you got for Gary?
No, I was just thinking about that one win that we did get on the homestand here. And I feel like Brian Wu was maybe overlooked because of how the game ended, but he was really good. But I think probably the most exciting thing we saw, I think for the first time, 2023 Matt Brash. So I'm wondering how that looked from your seat, watching Brash dominate really the heart of the Yankees order, including the big strikeout of Aaron Judge, who is just an absolute freak. And for Brash to do what he did to Aaron Judge is incredibly impressive, and I think incredibly important, especially with the bullpen having to cover as many innings as they have so far this year.
Yeah, it was awesome. I've missed Matt Brash so much.
Same.
I have said if everything was the same last year, except they had Matt Brash, they would have been a playoff team. I think he's that core to what they do, because we've seen it. He is unleashed in the most critical situations. And what was interesting to me, because I wasn't sure how they would use him to start, whether he would be thrown into those type of situations right away. And it does not get more high leverage than facing Judge in a tight game in the 8th inning. And that's a situation, hey, maybe they go to Munoz there and give Brash the 9th inning where he wouldn't face Grisham's been red hot too, wouldn't face those guys. Instead, hey, they handed it to Brash, which to me, it really felt like Brash is back. I mean, watching him punch out Judge and watching the stuff, it's like, oh yeah. And then you can kind of dream on what this can look like. Because I think overall Spire's been really good, despite the home run to Goldschmidt. Munoz, of course, has been invincible. That back 3 is really good. And especially in this short term, like when they have leads, they're going to have to close out games. And they're going to rely more on the bullpen, because they're not going to get the innings without Kirby and Gilbert and those guys. So the bullpen is going to have to come through for them. And when they hand the ball to those back 3, they're going to have to get those games. And to see Brash, as the guy we all know, I think it's enormous for this team. I don't think you can say enough how big it is for them. And I asked Dan Wilson the day after, like, this is like, you obviously trusted Brash to go to him in this situation. He's like, yeah, it doesn't get more high leverage. And we went to him because we knew he could get it done. And this is his role. So I think this is going to be it moving forward.
What have you thought of Carlos Vargas? A lot of people were surprised he made the team, and yet he's been given some high leverage opportunities and a couple hiccups here and there, but for the most part, he's been really good. And I'm just wondering, do the Mariners maybe view him as kind of the fourth option after the big three that they have back there? Is there more to go get? We saw a lot more swing and miss over the weekend from him as well, which is kind of the one thing that's been missing. But what have your thoughts been on Carlos Vargas?
Yeah, that's been you're right. That's been the missing piece for him. His ground ball rate has been great, but you look at the stuff, 98, the slider, the cutter. I mean, it's really good stuff. You would expect more swing and miss. So I kind of do expect more to come. And I think you're right. I think he fits into that fourth spot after the big three right now. He's pitched some really important innings. He's had a couple of hiccups. Everyone does, but he's pitched some really important innings for them. Yeah, I think overall, the bullpen, kind of big picture, the bullpen is going to need some more swing and miss. It's what's interesting about this bullpen compared to pens in the year past. They don't have a ton of swing and miss overall, outside of Munoz, of course, who's, been great at literally everything. Outside of that, there hasn't been a ton. So I think along the way, they'll need to find some. Legamina's been pretty good too. Like, he's been a good guy that I think is kind of stair-stepping up the leverage ladder. I'm interested in Coar. I know he's a ways away. He's on the rehab in Tacoma right now, but just given what we saw a couple years ago with just his pure stuff, I'm curious to see what that looks like. I was hoping Taylor would be a part of this, and still could at this point. We know how it works. He gets the slow start to the season. He hasn't been the same guy that we saw last year, but I do feel like at some point they're going to need some more swing and miss along the way, and maybe that comes internally, maybe externally. I don't know.
So I want to ask you about the coaching staff, because we get asked a lot about the impact of Dan Wilson, the impact of Edgar Martinez, Kevin Seitzer, Bobby Magallanes, etc. The difference between Dan and Scott Service, all that, and we're not there, right? We're not. I'm living in Toronto. Colby lives in Yakima. We're not credentialed. We're not there at the ballpark every day. So it's easy for us to talk about those things and get into hyperbole, and I don't want to do that. So typically that's just a topic that I mostly avoid or kind of just talk about in more broad terms, right? But for you, as someone that's there every day, you talk to the players, you're talking to Dan, you're talking to the coaching staff. What are the differences? And I'm not asking you to speak ill of Scott Service and
Sure.
The previous coaches that were here or anything like that, but I think fans are curious, like, what are the differences that you do see? Because it does seem like this has had a positive effect making this change. What are the differences that you see between the coaches that left last year at the end of the year and the arrival of Dan, the arrival of Edgar, Kevin Seitzer, Bobby Magallanes?
Yeah, there's a couple different things. And I think just big picture, it's things are different in terms of, we see it, how games play out. Like, there's some decisions that are different that we see with this Mariners group as opposed to the last Mariners group. And, some of those are, pinch hitting here, changing a pitcher there. We all kind of see it play out a little differently. Yeah, I will say this Mariners team in particular, because I think of the way they're structured and their injuries, there's a lot of decision points during the course of a typical Mariners game right now. So there's always a ton to second guess, I feel like, after every single game, just because of the sheer volume of decisions that are being made. But, outside of that, I've always said, just from the manager perspective, the most important stuff for a manager we never see. Like, we always see what happens on the field, like when Dan walks out and changes a pitcher or whatever. But I always think the most important stuff is, like, the job of a manager has grown so much over the last few years, and it is so different than it used to be. Like, just think back to when Earl Weaver or Lou Piniella or guys like that were managers. The job has changed dramatically since then. Because if you think about it, not only do you have the players to deal with, and you think about all the different places they come from, all the different parts of their career they're in. Like, you have guys that have been in the big leagues for 12 years, and you have guys that have been there for 12 days, right? Different experience levels, different skill sets, and you're trying to get them to go all in the same direction. You've got your analytics department that you're getting all the info from, that the coaching staff is getting. You're dealing with your coaching staff. How do you distribute the information to the players? There are all these things that are happening. It's much more like a CEO. And so I think it's really important. And what I think Dan, from my conversations, does a great job of is he's really great at empowering his coaching staff, which is great because the Mariners have a lot of smart coaches and they have a lot of smart analysts. And I think it's great that decisions are made with a lot of different smart people having input into those decisions. You know, all those meetings are still going on that were going on before, whether you're talking about bullpen, hitters meetings, you know, all that sort of thing. But Dan has done a really good job of empowering everyone around him. And everyone loves Dan. Everyone loves playing for Dan. Like, he's had a relationship. You think about all his time before he became manager. You know, he would go to Arkansas for a week or Tacoma for a week or Everett or wherever. And so you think about all the coaches that came up through the system. There's been a prior relationship there. There's been a relationship with the guys that have come up, Cal and George and Logan and everyone else. Like, he has already had an established relationship with everyone. And there's just a calm with Dan, I think, is the best way to describe it. So some of it you can't measure, right? But it's just leadership. Now, the hitting side, I think, is really interesting because I've had a lot of conversations about this. And this is the best way I can describe it, because it's funny when you look at the results and what's working, like they're smashing home runs and they're pulling the ball. Actually, you know, it depends on the day you look, but essentially at the same rate they did last year, or depending on the day, sometimes they're pulling it more than they did last year. So there is a difference, I think, between preaching a mindset and the results that are happening. And here's the best example I can give. I've talked to Cal Raleigh about this, and for him, it works best if he's thinking middle of the field, right? That's not what's happening. when Cal's at his best, he's pulling home runs, like he's pulling tanks, whether it's right-handed or left-handed. That's when he's at his best, and he's taking walks and, you know, doing a lot of other good things. But that's when he's at his best. He's pulling homers, but he's thinking middle of the field, and that's what helps him. From our standpoint, like, what do we care what he thinks about? Like, he could be thinking about Papa Smurf. It doesn't matter to us. He can think about anything, but for him, that helps him. And so for my conversations, like, the mindset they are preaching up the middle is helping them, even though the results are they're pulling the ball and they're hitting the ball hard mostly, and they're hitting home runs, right? So there's a difference between what they're preaching and what is happening, but that's fine, like that, because it's working, and every guy's individual. I think one of the most important conversations I had with Kevin Seitzer, and what I came away with the most, is he was talking about, you look at every player and every guy has a completely different swing. No two swings are alike. And so for me, that tells me that they are really meeting the individual, which I think is hugely important too, because every guy's different.
The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I mean, think about what you can do with $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You can join me on the Knicks bandwagon all the way to the finals, or bet on Anthony Edwards to eliminate another legend in the playoffs. And if you're new to FanDuel, now is the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're here with Mariners radio broadcaster Gary Hill Jr. That's really interesting insight there on the coaching staff, because again, you know, it's hard for us, specifically Colby and I, to kind of see that, right, and to be aware of that, because, you know, if we're not there on the field, really the only way that we can talk about the coaching staff is what we're seeing happening in the games that we're watching, right? And really, most of our analysis and our criticism just comes down to in-game decisions.
Sure.
Now, I haven't been a fan of a lot of the in-game decisions. Colby hasn't been a big fan of the in-game decisions. Aaron Goldsmith doesn't seem like he's been a big fan of the in-game decisions on the broadcast. So I want to ask you, what have you thought of? And obviously, there's a lot of things that branch off here when we talk about in-game decisions, and there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen and all that. Like you talked about, Dan empowers his coaches, and and there's a lot of people that factor into these decisions, but and obviously all the injuries and stuff. So it's a very tight window to fit through. But what have you thought about the in-game decisions so far?
Yeah. Let me put them in two buckets. First, I'll say, I think the bullpen decisions, let's set those aside for a second. I always think those are toughest to analyze because we don't have all the information going game by game, because there's always tiers going into a game. There's guys who are not available. We are not going to these guys no matter what. Then there's kind of the next tier is, hey, we would rather stay away from pitcher X, but in an emergency or a situation, we go to them. And I think it's particularly tough this season because the bullpen has had to cover so many more innings, I think, than we all anticipated. I mean, the bullpen has thrown a ton of innings. And I think what has made the Mariners so good the past few years and why their bullpen has been so good, no matter who's been in there, is I always felt like they were really good at putting guys in specific situations to be the best they can be. And mostly that's matchups, right? That's harder to do when you're covering 4 innings consistently every single night. Because what you're doing is you're asking guys, hey, I need an extra out here. I need an extra out there. Or, hey, I know this pocket is not a great matchup, but we have 3 guys down. So you have to go in this one. So I give them, I don't know if I give them grace on bullpen stuff because this has been, I think, a really hard year to manage. And then, a guy like Brash, he's not a full go, right? He's not being used as he has in the past. And, Taylor came back and they weren't using him the same. So they have a lot of balls in the air when it comes to the bullpen. So we'll put that one in a separate bucket, or at least I do. That's how I look at it.
Sure.
Now, I'm thinking of specific the other day, like Leote dropping down a sacrifice bunt with guys on first and second. That's probably one of the ones.
Let's get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably one of the ones that you two are talking about. Because honestly, like if I were in charge, I wouldn't have done that either. Of course, I'm not a huge sacrifice bunt guy. I generally don't like sacrifice bunts. Now, there are times for it. Like if you are in extra innings and you're the home team and the other team didn't score, you have a guy at second, you want to drop down a bunt, move him to third. Okay. There are times that it's fine. It's fine. But generally, I'm not a fan. And, I don't know. I looked at that situation and I thought you had a righty that kills righties on the mound. Like Julio had the home run. That was the first extra base hit that Schmidt had allowed against a righty on the season. And it's the Yankees. So I felt like,
you probably shouldn't be playing for just one run here.
Yeah.
I mean, averaging 6 runs a game.
Right. Like maybe Tavares runs into one, hits a 3-run home run, and that changes the game. Now, what are the odds of him doing that? Probably not good. And maybe they don't score anyway. So,
and maybe he strikes out and the guys don't advance, right?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Absolutely. But, this is all theoretical at this point because anything that we would have done could have worked out poorly as well. Like that's the nature of baseball. So there are things like that I look at and it's like, well, I wouldn't have done that. Or I wonder why he didn't pitch hit for him here. So I think because I'm one that as the game goes, I try and think along with the game. One, I think it's fun. Like, I think that's one of the great things about baseball is like, okay, like thinking about situations and what's going to happen next. And guys warm up in the bullpen. When are they going to go here? And it's something I like to talk about during the broadcast. And so I have found myself being wrong more this year than in years past, like wrong in terms of like what they've actually done.
Like predicting what they're going to do.
Thinking, because I like to think ahead and I talk about it because I think it's fun for people, at least I hope it is, fun for people to follow along with what's going on. And sometimes, say, well, this might be his last batter here, or this could be his last batter here, and it's not, which is fine. Like,
Yeah.
we're all wrong all the time.
Yeah.
But I found myself more wrong this year. And again, not that I'm just an idiot talking about baseball on the radio. Like, what do I know? Right. I'm just thinking along with stuff. But this is a long way of saying I will take Dan and how the clubhouse feels about him
Mm-hmm.
and how the coaching staff feels about him and how everything is working behind the scenes over, man, I would have done that differently today. Or, 3 days ago, I wish they would have done that instead. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Yeah.
I guess there's a lot more benefit than not for what's going
Right.
on with the current. And I know it's like that's the stuff we see, right? That's
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, that's the only thing we see when the game plays
Right.
out. It's like we
Right.
only see the pitching changes or the pinch hit or non-pinch hit or whatever. So
Mhm.
I 100% understand where people are coming from and their criticism about this move or that move. But I think big picture, like it's small.
Gotcha.
It's a small
Yeah.
percentage of the pie if you wanted to think about it in those terms.
Well, and that's why I wanted to ask you about it, right? Because you're there, you're having those conversations, you're seeing it happen. Now, obviously, you're not there behind closed doors and all that stuff, but like you're seeing more than most, right?
Yeah, and one other thing I would add to it is, the other thing is we were watching a manager in his 8th season by the end, right? Service
Yeah.
had been at this for a long time. I also think it's worth thinking about, and I know Dan leans on the people around him, but this is his first full season in this role.
Yeah.
And so I think there are decisions, and I know he won't come on and say this because, I don't think you would. I don't think you would. I don't think it benefits you to come out in public and say this, but I think there are lessons to get learned in games after decisions are made,
Sure.
which is
Yeah.
good. I mean, that's a healthy thing. That's something
Mhm.
you want from a
Yep.
manager. Like,
Yeah.
if you want when a manager makes a decision and things don't go well, and he talks about it with, his staff after the fact, like you want your manager to learn from it. And so
Yeah.
I think this whole thing is a learning process.
Right. Yeah.
Scott Service managed the game a lot differently in year 9 than he did in year 1.
Absolutely.
So
Which is a
Yeah.
great point. And it's
Yeah.
something we should all think about. Like over time, you just get used to it. But think back to year 1 with Scott. Like he was learning
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I got a couple quick final questions for you, but before that, Colby, you got anything else for Gary?
yeah, I think one of the more interesting, somehow polarizing players, at least where Ty and I sit, seems to be Julio, and there seems to be this wide chasm of opinion on Julio, and some think that he's never going to live up to that contract. Others think he's the best player they've ever seen. And I'm just wondering how you feel about Julio's season this year, because I think he's been pretty darn consistent. He's certainly been more
Yeah.
consistent than he was last year. We're seeing more power early. So I'm just wondering how you feel about Julio's season, where he's at in his career. It does feel like sometimes people forget that he's 24 years old and he's, made a couple all-star teams and all of that, but he had an incredible season.
He's been
against
worth
the
like
Yankees.
16 wins in his first 3
Yeah.
seasons, all that. Yeah. Like he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
Yeah.
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah.
I always feel like there's 2 conversations, at least in my mind, going on with Julio. Because if you look at his season, he's been a tremendously productive player. He's been really good in center field. He's been really good on the bases. And overall, he's been a productive hitter. I always think, though, Julio is not measured by any of those things. Julio is measured by extremely lofty expectations. And I feel like all conversations surrounding Julio are he's measured against superstar expectations. So I feel like whenever we talk about Julio, that's where the conversation always starts. But if you just think about in terms of like what he's done on the field this year, I think you're right. I think he's been really productive. I think he can be better offensively, and I think he will be better offensively. It feels like he's working himself into one of those grooves right now. In fact, I think if you look the past 10 days or so, like the stuff underneath and surface numbers have been really good.
Mm.
And I do look to him like they're going to need him, and they're going to need his power specifically. You know, when I think about, okay, you got 19 home runs in the first month from Polanco and Cal. They're not going to do that in May. They're not going to do that in June. Who are the guys that can supplement? Well, Julio is an obvious choice for one of those guys. Like, they're going to need one of his power binges along the way. But it is, man, he's still super young. He's not even entering his prime yet. And he's still really good.
Yeah.
But I understand why, like, he is shown flashes of being one of the greatest players on the planet. And that's what I think people think about a lot. And he's shown it for long periods of time. Like, we've seen it for a month at a time where he's just unbelievable. And so I think everyone wants that all the time, which would be great. I mean, we'd all love that all the time. But
I would love to see August 2023 Julio every single day.
You could just watch Yankee games and watch Aaron Judge. Same thing.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yes. That's a big ask for at this point in his career. And we'll see where he goes. Like, I've been encouraged by a lot of the under the hood stuff we've seen so far this year. Like, the strikeout rate has been something that has impressed me so far. And he was still hitting the ball hard, which is great. So I think the surface numbers are going to follow. And with everything else he's doing, that's a really good player. That's an all-star player.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last couple questions for you here. We saw Jorge Polanco get pinch hit for Monday night. Was kind of wondering if maybe that was just because the game was pretty much out of reach at that point. But then he didn't get a start on Tuesday against the lefty. And then yesterday against the righty, he's DHing. Mm-hmm. Did he re-aggravate the side? Do you have any insight on that?
I do not have insight on that. We were kind of wondering that as well. I mean, it's one of two things. It's that, like, he tweaks something again, or the reality is you have got to find ways to not play him every day, I think, because we know, even as a DH a lot of the time, we know he has a history, especially the last few years, of lower leg injuries. Yeah. And he has become critical to the offense, especially with the way he's performed so far this year. So it's either he tweaks something or, hey, this is a natural spot to give him a day off. Because if you're going to give him a day at this point, it's going to be against a lefty.
Yep.
So I don't know which it is at this point, but it could be either. But they do need to find ways to get him off his feet because they need him in the lineup, especially right now with the other injuries. Like, he's so important to what they do.
Then lastly, we've obviously seen a lot of changes in the broadcast crews this offseason. A lot of changes more so on the TV side of things than radio, but you've kind of seen more of an increased role. Things are a little more just kind of put in place there on the radio side. Like, Aaron's not coming over. I'm sure you're very sad about that. But I guess I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of people are curious, just kind of how things have changed for you with the changes at the network and just with the broadcast and all that.
It's been a big year for me personally. Yeah, I've done a lot of games in the past, but I haven't done in terms of play-by-play. I haven't done every game in the past, but this season I'm on every single one play-by-play, which was something I've dreamed about as far back as I can remember, when I was just a little kid running around city of Tacoma, and people would ask, "Hey, what do you want to do when you grow up?" I want to be a Seattle Mariners play-by-play announcer, which was obviously ridiculous, and there was no way I was going to be that. And but here I am doing it every day. So for me, it's been incredible, and I just love talking ball with Mariner fans every single day, and I get excited every day about whatever matchup it is, whoever they're playing. I'm super curious and super interested about baseball and Mariners in general. And I hope that comes across with some of the stuff that I talk about and we talk about every single day, but I'm just having the time of my life. I love it. It's been the greatest.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Gary, thanks so much for hopping on. It's Pleasure as always. Enjoy the road trip as much as you can. Try not to melt down in Houston. Try to avoid the poisonous steaks, all that good stuff. And hey, let us know if you hit a new personal best on your runs.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Hey, it was great to catch up again. It's been a while, so hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later.
All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thanks again to Gary for joining us, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.